Hi everyone. Hope you're all doing well in these bizarre times that we live in. So today I want to talk a little bit about Mercury stationing retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo. As you can see here on the screen, I have the chart for today, which is Melbourne, Australia time, as per usual at this point. And Venus has also just ingressed into Virgo. So we've got some pretty significant changes happening post the new moon, which just occurred yesterday, last night. You can see the moon's at 21 degrees of Leo, so it's only been a few hours since it's moved away from the sun. That new moon is potent. It was opposite Pluto, and the sun is still opposite Pluto at the moment, actually. In my experience, it's absolutely correct to give such a wide orb for an opposition. That is, 13, 12 degrees quite easily. I'd even give it 15 at times. I've seen the effects of it, which is why I say that with confidence. So we'll talk a little bit about this Mercury stationing retrograde in Virgo, and we'll talk a little bit about Venus in Virgo today. And I'm not going to cover Venus is going to be picking up a lot of aspects, and I will name the aspects in the days, but I won't unpack every single detail about those aspects. I simply don't have the time to do that. I've got some pretty critical matters still going on in my life. They're quite urgent, and it's been a very difficult time for me personally. And by the way, some of you might remember that I mentioned I found out I wasn't allergic to penicillin. Well, that's actually crap. I actually am. Which I had a feeling something was not quite right about that. It's a bit of a long story, but I was given some antibiotics just last week, and they had penicillin in them, and I just had, the worst reaction. So I went through that as well. Yes, it's been, pretty challenging times. Anyway. The thing that I thought about that, though, was the sextile that Venus was picking up to Jupiter and Mars. Jupiter and Mars are in Gemini, and Jupiter in Gemini is in its detriment. I did point that out, and I said we must keep that in mind, that Jupiter in Gemini is in detriment, and I have spoken about Jupiter in Gemini, over the last few months, I think, anyway. So when a planet is in detriment, something's amiss, or something will become amiss in some kind of way. It's important to always remember that a planet in detriment or fall usually functions in a different way in terms of outside of the consensus reality, but it can screw things up as well. That's just a fact. So anyway, that's that. Also, I've got a class which I was supposed to teach last week, and I had to postpone just due to the critical matters going on in my personal circumstances at the moment. And I'm hoping to teach that class this coming Friday Australia time, Thursday evening New York City time. So if you want to catch that class, you're more than welcome to join, or if you want to catch the recording, you can also have access to that. Just send me an email. The class is on Pallas Athena, the almighty Pallas Athena, who's just this, the more research and more study that I do, the more I discover about her. And I've discovered so many new things just in the last couple of weeks, to be quite honest, which are really, 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 really fascinating, mind-blowing details that really I've never heard anyone speak about, except one astrologer has just touched on one little point about the myth, and I'm not going to name who and what, because I want to talk about it in my own class, okay? So anyway, Pallas Athena is far more significant than people realize, basically, is the whole point. And there are, sorry about the throat, I'm still, still recovering from sinus infections, etc. There are still many, there are many things about Pallas Athena that connect to the Venus morning star, for instance, you've got the asteroid Pallas Athena, there it is right there in Scorpio. She's in Scorpio. She was retrograde for ages, now she's direct. She corresponds to the Gorgon Medusa. You know, there's so much about this goddess. She's the goddess of law, the goddess of the arts, that includes martial arts, you know, all styles of martial arts, and then of course the creative arts. There's so much to understand about this goddess that I think yeah, I'm just really I'm always blown away by the new things that I discover. And again, I can't really talk about it right now because I want to talk about it in my class. And there's just some mind-blowing bits of information, including some, you know, some asteroids that come into this story as well, which are particular goddesses that are absolutely crucial, particularly with regards to wisdom. Anyway, I'll leave that there. But if you want to know more about it, just send me an email. Okay, so Mercury stations today to go retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo. So basically, let me see, what are the dates? It entered its shadow period on July the 16th. It stations retrograde today, which will be the 4th for you guys in the Northern Hemisphere. It forms a cazimi on the 18th of August at 26 degrees of Leo, to the sun, that is, of course. And then stations direct August 28th at 21 Leo, and leaves its shadow period on September the 11th, which it will be on that day at 4 degrees of Virgo, right, which is where it is today, for instance. So basically we're looking at, you know, pretty much all of August and pretty much all of September. We're going to have Mercury track Leo and Virgo, and its retrograde begins in Virgo. So that's important, the fact that it begins in Virgo, but it goes back into Leo because of how early it stations retrograde in Virgo at 4 degrees. And as I said in my, I think it was the new moon, Leo new moon video, first of all, the Leo new moon actually activates the Leo Venus star point, which is Venus's retrograde cycle in 2023, August 2023. And also, you know, Mercury stationing retrograde in Virgo going back into Leo also activates that Venus star point. In addition to that, Mercury is conjunct Venus here as well, as Mercury stations retrograde. So there's a lot of Venusian mercurial matters combined, and also the Leo Venus star point comes into the picture as well. I'm not going to focus too much on the activation of the Venus star point because I've already done that in the previous video, but it's just important to bring that up today again because it's part of this story. And there is one very interesting asteroid that is conjunct Mercury as Mercury stations retrograde, which is a difficult asteroid. But I suppose that depends on what's going on in your life, you know, it depends on your circumstances. The asteroid in question is the goddess Nemesis, who is a pretty intense goddess. Corresponds to enemies and retribution and self-undoing and, you know, scapegoating and revenge and, you know, all that sort of stuff, right? She is also the equalizer of fate. So she really likes to balance things out. When people are doing a no-no, a naughty thing, so to speak, she sort of comes in with full force and you know, she really tries to iron that shit out, basically. So when there's something that's really imbalanced and really unfair, and people are being cocky and arrogant and you know, mistreating others, she will come in with full force, so to speak. On the other hand, it could also be enemies our own enemies, as it were, that might be trying to do that to us. And when Nemesis is there, she doesn't like that. She will step in, as it were. So, you know, it's a combination of things, depending again on what's going on with your own personal circumstances. But I just thought it's worth to mention, because you might be going through a situation where you do have some kind of conflict or battle or challenge with somebody who's acting like an enemy. Okay, and then this will be very, very important, because it is the asteroid actually, well, it's going to be conjunct Venus as well. Well, it is conjunct Venus. Venus is going to catch up to Nemesis. Nemesis is actually, what is it? Is it 4 degrees? I'll show you guys so you can actually see it for yourself. There it is, 2 degrees of Virgo. Can you see that there? Nemesis, 2 degrees of Virgo. Okay, so Mercury's just past it and Venus is just catching up to it. I think that's important, again, you know, for specific circumstances that people may be dealing with that bring in matters that have to do with unfairness and unjust things, and people acting as enemies and revengeful and things like that. Okay, and I know a couple of people at the moment that are going through that exact type of situation. So let's talk a little bit about Mercury retrograding in Virgo. First of all, Virgo is a feminine sign, and Virgo is without a doubt one of the most complex archetypes in the zodiac. And Venus is in Virgo as well. So we've the retrograde journey that Mercury does, whilst it goes back into Leo, it's tracking back into Leo will correspond to some matters in your Leo house, as it were, the Leo part of your life. And certainly the matters pertaining to the Venus retrograde period last year. So some things that might have started then or might have continued are up for review, right? Are up for well, in Virgo, it's actually about discerning and using critical reasoning skills, right, to discern the rubbish, the junk, from the good things, the pure things, and the authentic things that actually help you serve yourself so that you can serve life, so that you can serve God, as it were, so that you can serve the goddess. This is the priestess energy. This is about purification and cleaning things out, cleaning the mess that was created previously. And Leo, you know, is a very, very dramatic sign. You know, it's got so many wonderful, beautiful qualities about it. There's no question about that. But it is so drama orientated. And so if you've got, you know, certain situations and circumstances, particularly love affairs, relationships, Venus in Leo, where things have gone pear-shaped, or things have just been, you know, you've just been parting, as it were, and becoming sort of more deeply involved in the drama and the passion and all of that, which is Leo. Well, when we reach Virgo, these two signs that are adjacent each other, or houses, the Leo house and the Virgo house, couldn't be more different to one another. They could not be more different. It's important to understand that, because when the energies are transitioning from Leo to Virgo, it's literally like stepping aside from the fun and the drama and the passion and the heat and the conflict, the whatever it was, and actually now looking at it in a very with a microscope. You know, Virgo leaves no stone unturned, very much like Scorpio. You know, it's the analyst, right? It's going to dissect everything that is before it, and it has to, because it has to clear out the garbage. Think about Virgo just in terms of medical astrology. Virgo in the physical body corresponds to that part of the stomach region that basically clears out all the shit out of our body, right? It discards all the toxins, it discards all the junk, all the things that are unhealthy for us. That's its job in our physical body. So that's what it's doing in our life, as it were, right? Depending on where Virgo is in your chart and so forth as well. So this is, this is a big shift of energy here, because Venus has come out of Leo, where there's been a lot of drama or play, or could have been a lot of creativity as well. There's obviously a lot of positive things that could have come out of that. But I suspect there's been some pretty intense, dramatic things in people's love lives and relationship lives, because Venus in Leo has activated, again, that, Venus, Leo star point from last year, this new moon has activated the Leo Venus star point. It's opposite Pluto. This is drama territory. It's intense territory. Venus made the square to Uranus. Earlier, she made the trine to Neptune. So she's been going through quite a lot in her very passionate expression of Leo, right? And now in Virgo, she's got to bring in the element of, well, intuition. It's a feminine archetype, right? So the feminine qualities in life, whether we are looking at the feminine quality through nature or different circumstances, or women themselves, or even men with their own inner feminine faculty, because we all have feminine, masculine faculties within us. The feminine faculty or archetype or field of energy is deep, complex, mystical, and hidden, which is why a lot of the astrological archetypes or goddesses in mythology, asteroid goddesses or mythological goddesses such as Lilith, such as Medusa, have been demonized, because the feminine, for the most part, has been hijacked by the masculine for thousands of years and has been subsequently demonized for the most part. We all know that. So the feminine has that very deep mystique quality about it, and everything that it draws from and the wisdom that it brings forth, that it activates or integrates, all comes from within. And that's very much Venus in Virgo at a deep esoteric or evolutionary soulful level. Mercury in Virgo is not so different to that in terms of, well, first of all, Mercury is extremely dignified in the sign of Virgo. It's its rulership sign. It's a brilliant placement for Mercury for any type of dissecting, analysis, information, clearing out things, getting to the bottom of things, understanding everything that needs to be fixed, as it were, altered, corrected, cleaned up, right? So the Mercury going retrograde, that within itself, in evolutionary astrology especially, or at least, the Mercury retrograde function operates very much from that feminine field as well, because when a planet turns retrograde, it is operating purely from within. It has the within factor, goes straight to that feminine wisdom, that deep, intuitive, feminine wisdom. So Mercury's job here is going to be about really getting to the bottom of what's been going on with this Leo season that has activated the Venus star point, and where things need to now be totally purified and cleaned up. And Mercury going retrograde also, according to evolutionary astrology, acts very much like a Jupiter energy, which is the opposite sort of part, in that Mercury normally corresponds to our left brain, astrologically speaking, which is our linear logical mind that gathers information and data and tries to deduct the information and data in order to connect it and make sense of it, right? That's its job. But the right brain faculty corresponds to Jupiter and or Sagittarius, which is the wisdom component, which enables us to actually grasp the infinite field, if you like, and certainly the bigger picture of what we are actually looking at here. So this Mercury retrograde cycle is an opportunity for us to go within and draw from the deep feminine wisdom counterpart within us to discern the crap that is there that needs to be tidied up and needs to be purified and cleaned up. And a very simple analogy, you know, regarding Leo and Virgo, and I love using this analogy because it's so mundane and therefore everyone can relate to it. It's literally like going out one night to a party, all right, house party, whatever, wherever, just a party where there's music, could be drugs, could be alcohol, could be whatever, you name it, it's all on. And you're just partying until there's no tomorrow, right? Until it's the last day on earth. And that the extremity of that partying, right? When you wake up in the morning and you've got a hangover and your head's about to explode and your house looks like a bomb hitter and, you know, everything is just an absolute diabolical mess. Well, that's Virgo. That's when you've woken up and you look at what the fuck is going on around you. That's when you switch into Virgo and you start Virgonizing the mess. That's literally one of the greatest, simplest, mundane metaphors for that transition of Leo to Virgo. And that's what we are dealing with in the context of our life story relative to our personal circumstances, right? With this Venus transiting Virgo and with Mercury transiting Virgo, although Mercury is going to dip back into Leo. The point, though, is that even though Mercury goes back into Leo, the retrograde begins in Virgo. So it's about going back and revisiting that Leo domain and everything that occurred there through the Mercury in Virgo, which is about deep feminine wisdom. It is about intuition. And I'd also like to add to that, which is extremely important, is that as soon as Mercury stations retrograde, or even before that, you know, Mercury is forming an inconjunct to Pluto as well. So it's, you know, that's part of its journey as well. As it retrogrades back into Leo, it's got to work with that Pluto energy, which is not a bad thing, because basically the inconjunct aspect is it's a critical sort of energy because it speaks to crisis. Okay, it speaks to reorientation, crisis, leaving things behind, a change of mind, letting something go that perhaps you know, it reached its full limit, cannot go any further with it, whatever that may be for you. And it's also a very significant message around inward alignment. Inward alignment in this sense speaks to consciously aligning with your higher will to make the best decisions moving forward with this Mercury retrograde cycle. So the Mercury retrograde is going to help us revisit these things that we need to revisit, need to look at. And now we are going to look at them with our inner feminine wisdom counterpart, Mercury in Virgo, with the skillful, analytical, dissecting component of Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, and with the quincunx to Pluto, which is going to be possibly looking at something that's not easy and not pleasant, quite intense. It's Pluto, but it's soul work, and it is about ultimately an inward alignment that we must consciously find a way to integrate. So in a nutshell, that's really the picture of Mercury. But as I said, it is conjunct Nemesis as well. So there's some tricky kind of energies to it because of the quincunx to Pluto and because of the conjunction to Nemesis. Now, for some people, the Nemesis component might not mean anything, but for others, it will. So again, it depends on your circumstances. Finally, have some beautiful sunshine here today. It's been a very cold winter. I've been sick pretty much all of winter. I'm just so over it, frankly. Okay. Now, Venus, our Lady Venus, she's an evening star at the moment. And I think, being an evening star and transiting Virgo the energies really match, because the evening star is the feminine Venus, Aphrodite, love goddess. She is on the other side, furthest away from us. In other words, we see her as an evening star in the sky. She's more connected to the stars and the divine feminine wisdom and so forth. And because Venus in Virgo, transiting Venus in Virgo, has a similar type of energy about it, because it's a feminine sign which takes us within, there's a marriage there, if you like, with Venus being an evening star and Venus in Virgo. It's so about, priestess energy. On another level, if we are working, with the goddess energy ourselves in our life, for whatever reason that may be, spiritually, in purification processes, creative processes, intuitive processes, there's a number of different things, ceremonies, there's all sorts of practices. This is a wonderful, passage with Venus in Virgo to really help us clean out, as I said, the garbage that might not have looked like garbage at the time. It might have looked like a hell of a lot of fun. But come to the point where Mercury is in Virgo, Venus is in Virgo, we need to re-examine all this now and go, okay, some of this might have been fun in certain pockets, but a lot of it actually has trashed this part of my life, or this part of my mind, or this part of my heart, or whatever it may be, right? So it's really about being, we've got to think about things like humility, humbleness, really being very honest with ourselves, but also watching that we don't get into that negative mindset of that really negative critical mind that Virgo can bring up as well, which brings about things like guilt, not feeling perfect enough, not feeling good enough, so on and so forth. We've got to really catch those components if they arise in our mind as well, because well, no one is perfect. First of all, that is a fundamental truth. So to be, seeking perfection is futile. It just leads you to roads where you'll always just feel bad about yourself. So it's not about feeling bad about ourselves and bashing ourselves or bashing others, but rather just seeing very purely and very honestly, what have I been doing? What has it contributed to my life? If it's contributed toxic things, then what do I need to do to clear this shit out? How can I honor myself in a more pure, holistic manner? How can I bring in, a greater sense of humbleness and humility and acceptance as well to those components of myself that are not perfect? Yeah, I fucked up here, I fucked up there, I did this, I did that. I'm not perfect. It's okay. But it's also important with that okay comment to recognize where you have made some mistakes or poor choices. Mistakes are not a wrong thing. Often the word mistake is, clumped up there with, oh, that's wrong. What you did there was wrong. Well, if we don't do anything wrong, we're never going to grow. So we have to do things that are classed as a wrong thing or a mistake in order for us to work things out, to understand, to learn from everything all the time. That's what we're doing here. So just remember, with Venus, she can have that side where she can be, quite critical in ways that don't serve anyone. But the more pure side of Venus in Virgo is the priestess, making sure that we clean everything that we need to clean and purify it so that we can integrate and work with that energy in a conscious way. It has to be done in a conscious way. Otherwise, if we're not doing it consciously and we're not having some self-acceptance for our imperfections, then we're just going to get caught up with this Venus in Virgo in the way of criticizing ourselves or criticizing others. And sometimes there is what's called, constructive criticism. Sure, I accept that. But there's a difference between constructive criticism, critical reasoning skills, and just bashing yourself in the head or bashing somebody else for your own imperfections or for others' imperfections. It's just important to keep those points in mind. Now, Venus is going to make some really interesting aspects, and let me just tell you what they are. And just because Mercury is conjunct Venus as it stations retrograde, the revisiting and rethinking and decision-making, because a lot of decision-making, believe it or not, happens through the retrograde period. We can actually change our mind completely or start something completely new in that retrograde process, simply because of just how much intuitive wisdom we can gain in that process. Because when a planet turns retrograde, it literally taps into its soul inner wisdom. That's what it's fundamentally doing. So it's getting insight, if you like, or receiving insight or integrating into insight that it can normally not tap into. That's the beauty of planets going retrograde. But it doesn't mean it comes without challenges or without difficulties. It's going to be different for each person, depending on whether you have Mercury natally in retrograde mode, which I do, for instance. So I live in that Mercury retrograde all the time, which means I'm just so in touch with what my soul wants me to do, and I'm constantly just eliminating information, useless BS crap information that my soul does not need. That's what I'm literally doing every single day. So when Mercury goes retrograde, for those that don't have Mercury retrograde, that's what it's an opportunity to do, to go deep into the soul receive the messages from the soul so that you can get on track with your evolutionary path and your soul's evolutionary intentions. So, Venus will square Jupiter on the 19th of August. Look, honestly, that's normally not a difficult aspect, okay? It can just be excess. You know, if we're going to pick the worst end of the spectrum, it's usually just excess. Now, what is that excess? It depends on what the hell you are doing at that point in your life. It's obviously related to Venusian things, though. So it is about pleasure and so on and so forth. But think about it, Venus is in Virgo. So like a simple example might be that someone goes on this, you know, really strict exercise diet regime, right? And they just overdo it, you know, at that time when Venus is squaring Jupiter, you know, the diet is just too severe, too extreme for your body type, etc. The exercise regime is too severe, or you could go the other way around. Typically, I would think with Venus in Virgo, though, she's going to be very picky, so she's going to be more interested in cleaning things up as opposed to just sitting there and eating, you know, 5 bags of chips and 6 bars of chocolate. You know, she's going to feel too guilty to do that anyway. So, but yeah, just some examples, basic examples. Again, you need to apply this to your own chart. You know, where are these planets transiting in your chart? That's what it always comes down to. Now, a couple of days later, Venus squares Mars, which is on the 22nd of August. Now, I'm giving you Melbourne, Australian dates, right? So for those of you that in the Northern Hemisphere, which I know is the majority of you that listen to me, just take it a day back, that's all, with the dates that I'm speaking to. Venus square Mars is always volatile energy. It's very intense, dynamic, volatile, and it can be very explosive as well. It's a square aspect, okay? So yeah, that's going to be a tricky one, depending on what's going on in your life, of course. And that purely, and obviously speaks to, you know, the masculine, feminine, love, passion, you know, romance, sex, you know, relationships, all that sort of stuff, right? And by the way, when Venus squares Mars and Jupiter, she's also conjunct Lilith at that time, which adds a real a wild card, if you like, into the mix. Now, mind you, it's only there for a couple of days, but sometimes things can be building up and then they just escalate, right? Or they're triggered, right? Because of the circumstances that are leading up to each portal, each transit, in other words. Now, Lilith is a wild card because she can be, she's not a controllable force. You know, she is so non-consensus. And that's not a bad thing. That can be an opportunity, for example, to really liberate yourself, you know, with certain relationship matters during that time. But it also, I've seen Lilith come up very strongly in matters of abuse. So once again, it depends on what's going on in your life, but just note that Lilith is there through the 19th and 22nd of August. Now, on the 19th, Venus is going to be opposite Saturn, because on the 19th, she'll be 18 degrees of Virgo. So those days, actually, I would say, you know, never mind the Venus square Jupiter so much, that's not really a problem, but conjunct Lilith, square Mars, and opposite Saturn, you know, Mars and Saturn are the two malefics, and Lilith is a dark energy when unintegrated. Okay, so you can see what's kind of presenting there, right? It's not an easy energy at all. So just be mindful of those things, you know, depending on what's going on in your life and what you're dealing with and the choices that you make around that time, you know, because it can it can create some fire, you know, that you just don't need, right? Saturn certainly doesn't create fire. It creates the opposite, creates cold ice queen, So I suspect some separation to occur at that time. Something significant really will take a different direction. Again, in relationships, it's Venus opposite Saturn. If you've already separated from a situation, it might just be the sober, the clear, sober perspective that you actually need, right, relative to your circumstances in Venusian matters. After that, Venus forms an inconjunct or quincunx to Chiron, which is on the 24th of August. So sticking to this story where there might have been a bit of chaos or a bit of drama or a lot of drama or a lot of conflict, depending on what's going on, the inconjunct to Chiron will possibly activate the pain around those issues if there's been some hurt that has gone on. Usually when there's drama, conflict, challenges with, you know, love and relationships and so forth, we feel hurt, or we hurt somebody else, or somebody hurts us, etc. Right? So the inconjunct Chiron is its inconjunct is always crisis, leaving behind changing of mind. That's the nature of the aspect, but this is Chiron, so it might just bring up something that we're still in pain of. So just be aware of that. And finally, on the 27th of August, Venus forms a trine to Uranus, which, frankly speaking, that's the most positive aspect, because after that, on the 29th, she forms an opposition to Neptune. And that's La La Land, dreamland again, right? But Venus would have gone through so much in her passage of Virgo. By the time she reaches 29 degrees of Virgo and forms an opposition to Neptune, that'll just be the last. It might just be the last dispelling, right, of the hypnotic space that one might have been in relative to Venusian things. But the trine to Uranus is good because that can really bring in a sense of breakthroughs and liberation, which of course is Uranus, and it comes in a trine aspect because Virgo trines Taurus. So that might just be, well, trines are always energies that support us in our path, right? There's not really hardly any effort required. It's an organic, natural ease of energies that support us with what we are working through, what we are integrating, and what we are trying to do at that time. So there might just be a natural, you know, breakthrough that occurs at that time. Once again, it depends on your personal circumstances. Okay, I'm going to sign off because, as I said at the very beginning, I've got some urgent matters to still attend to, and that's what I have to do. So I will see you guys when I see you guys. I don't know when it will be, but I'm sure I'll be back on soon again at some point. And by the way, you know, the rest of the year, we have... what is it? Let me see. We have 4 back-to-back supermoons, and within that is included a partial lunar eclipse. So, you know, this is, yeah, I think this just shows us just how volatile really things are going to be right through to the end of the year. Supermoons are, you know, they're pretty important in really in so many ways, because the moon corresponds to the people. It always, basically in mundane astrology, the moon represents the people, right? So humanity. And in our own personal lives, you know, the moon is our emotional body. in evolutionary astrology, the moon corresponds to an aspect of our ego. So the moon is a very, it's just a very personal body, period. It affects everything, the tides, in the ocean, the fields, the people, our own bodies, and so forth. And so when we have supermoons, things get amplified, right? We're talking about full moons that are going to be supermoons. One of them is going to be a lunar eclipse. In other words, full moon eclipse, even though it's partial, but it's still an eclipse. A partial eclipse still has a lot of power. Don't underestimate that. And actually, the partial lunar eclipse is August 19th. So that's this month. So supermoons, yeah, I think they just illuminate everything so much more. And the moon always brings things, corresponds to things from the past, it stirs up the emotions. So I think we really need to find ways to really ground ourselves. And this journey of Venus in Virgo and then Mercury in Virgo is a really, really important passage to help us do that, actually, especially given these supermoons that we've got back to back for the rest of the year. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. Much love. And if you enjoy my work and appreciate it, don't forget to hit the what is it, the super like or super thanks or thanks button or whatever the hell it's called. Not many people hit that. I have a hit like every 3 months or something like that, which, is a bit disappointing, given how much energy and time I give. Anyway, it is what it is. God always looks after me, as does the goddess. Love you all and see you soon.